Good morning, family. How are you? Listen, I want to share this right quick. I know I look like a big pumpkin. It's not because I celebrate Halloween, because I don't, baby. I don't celebrate any of the holidays. They're just like regular days go by. But I'm about to go and I got to change some rear brakes, right, on my truck. But I wanted to share this morning. As I was getting my boots out of my office this morning, I saw this kit right here that I'm going to show you guys. These are some other things that I wanted to share about preparedness. As we are going into the winter time, many of you are familiar with the different various storms that we've had over the past few years, where many people have lost their lives, right? There was I don't think it was last year, I think year before last, if I'm not mistaken, where a young girl it was a young girl. She had moved upstate as a nurse or a nursing assistant, and I think she was on her way to work, and she got trapped in her car. She froze in her car. Many people froze in their car. They froze to death because the traffic was so backed up. They had like this blizzard. I think it was going up into the Ohio area. Some of you may remember what I'm talking about, right? I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before last, because we shared some of the stories in the community section, right? And so also, there were a lot of people that had power outages and things. And I always say this prior to the winter: go ahead and get you a backup heating supply unit. Find you a way to heat your home or your car, anywhere. Just warm yourself if in the event that there are power outages in the wintertime, because we know that, yes, even though we had a very hot summer, and we're having very hot summers. When people lose power in the summertime, yes, there have been some deaths where people have had heat stroke and stuff like that. The heat has dehydrated a lot of people. But I personally, when it comes to the different information that is reported during the winter times, it seems as though there are more deaths during the winter times when people lose the ability to heat their home or to heat themselves, right? A lot of people freeze to death. And so what I just wanted to share is, if you are able to, now is the time to look for a backup heating supply. I know many of you already have these things. You already are fully prepared. Many of you even have homes. You have fireplaces, chimneys in your home. You have different things like that. So that is also a blessing. But for those who do not, right, now is the time to go ahead and look for a backup heating supply while there are supplies left. And this right here is one way for those who use those portable heaters that take the propane tanks. We've shared how a lot of those little buddy heaters, people use the 1 pound cylinders. Well, some of you may remember there was a lot of price gouging going on. I think it was last year or year before last, where I give out a lot of these kits in the wintertime, right? I give out a lot of these kits, and I also have propane cylinders. I myself have never had to use one, but I have them just in case. And during the wintertime, I find myself having to give out more of these resources for people who they've run out of certain resources and they don't have it. There are a lot of people who live in RVs, some people who live in the woods, who live in tents. That's their way of life. But many of you remember these 1 pound canisters, these ones that are light green. They've been approved by DOT where you can transport these, or you're able to transport these and refill these. But the dark green ones, they're not approved to be refilled, right? So when you get these light green cans and you have a large 20 pound or a 40 pound or 30 pound propane tank, you can refill these right at home. So if you could get you a larger propane tank, and let's say you may have a small buddy heater that takes these 1 pound canisters, that's more convenient, where you can move it from place to place, and those buddy heaters can heat up a large area in a small amount of time, right? And so it's more convenient, and some people feel more safer with these smaller tanks in their home when they do have to bring these things in their home. But what had happened was these tanks were very scarce last year before last. I remember when I ran out of these kits, right? And I was trying to purchase some for someone, and I think it was on Amazon. I screenshot. I couldn't even believe it. And I shared it in the community section. So if you scroll way back, you will find it. and you can get one of these cans. Usually they were about $9, $12. Now they're going for about $20, which still isn't bad. But the price, these had become so scarce and so in demand. I think they were selling this one can for like, what was the price? Anywhere, I think it was like $80 or something like that, and it was just ridiculous. I refused to purchase that, but that's how much people were selling what they had left. I think one I even saw was $99 just for this 1 pound canister. But you can get a kit like this that comes with the canister. It comes with the stand for your propane tank. It comes with the adapters that you need to transfer the propane to these canisters to fill them up. You can get these kits now. They're back in stock for like $40, right? And so that's what I wanted to share. If you don't already have a backup heating supply, if you're able to get one, I think that's a wise thing to do, especially with everything that has been transpiring over these last 48 hours in this country, in this world, around this world. I think it's good to have a backup heating supply, especially if you have children. If you have a home with the fireplace built in, with the chimney built in, that's a blessing. You know, if you have a backyard or someplace where you can build you a fire pit just with some regular flat large blocks, or even a small brick stove with some small blocks, it's good to build it now. Have these things in place now before the weather gets bad and you don't want to be out there, your hands all cold. You want to have your stuff in place and test them to see how they would function in the event that you may need them. I built me a fire pit several years ago. I've used it several times. I burn things sometimes, but I've never personally needed to cook on. But you can build a fire pit. You can get, there's this what do you call it? The metal I don't know the right name for it right now. It's not coming to my mind, but you can get like this metal sheet to put over your fire pit. You can cook food right over that fire pit, you know, once the fire gets going. And so these are just some things that you can be cognizant of and be aware of. To have a backup heating supply. I think you can find a buddy heater now if you take time to look around for less than $50, you know. And like I said, if you ever lose power and you don't have a fireplace in your home where you can just go out and cut you down some wood, and even if you do have a fireplace, you want to make sure you go ahead and get some wood chopped up just to have it on hand. And if you need it when you need it, you want things to be convenient for you when you need it. And if you don't need it, it's there, it's yours, nobody can take it from you, right? And you want to have you a good chopping axe. If you've never used the axe before, then you want to get out there and practice swinging that axe, you know, cutting up some wood, you know. Practice makes perfect, right? And then in the event you may need these things, you already know what to do or how to do it. And if you don't need them, perhaps you may have someone. I'm pretty sure if we run into some times like we've run into in the past during the winter, you may come across someone that needs something from you, that may need some of that wood that you already have. You know, they need you to help them and their family in some way. You want to be a great resource for your community. But I think it's very wise to have a backup heating supply, right? We can't go wrong with that. And don't always rely on somebody to come, that somebody's just going to be there to save you or look out for you. Don't always rely on the government. You know, when those snowstorms were happening, you couldn't just call and get help right away. People had to sit for days. That's how they froze to death in their cars. Just upstate, when I went to visit upstate a few days ago, and I saw how bad the storm had demolished these places. You know, Asheville, North Carolina got demolished. And I think a lot of this storm in certain places that it hit is a lot of God's judgment. I just felt certain things as I was riding through certain places, right? But I'm not even going to go into that. But you know, you had a guy that shared how everything, I think this was yesterday or maybe the day before yesterday, how everything in one of the Walmarts there, everything, when I say everything, the freezers, every section was bare. So that means that people who were without, they were getting what they need. It wasn't really panic. You can't call that panic buying in that type of situation, because there are people who were already affected by the effects of the storm. There were people who already lost everything. I drove through some of those cities. I drove through some of those neighborhoods. Even calling the police wasn't meaning that you were going to get, service right away, because there's only so much that the police could handle. You had multiple traffic lights out. But like I said, one thing I did notice is like there was almost this calmness, this humbling thing in the atmosphere where people were showing respect and patience toward each other. Cause I could assume because they lost so much, because there were several traffic lights in multiple of the cities that were just out. And so you would think that I know, me being a former police officer, when there's a traffic light out, you get a lot of accidents. They call them 1050s. You get a lot of traffic accidents. And so I was just thinking, oh shucks. And every time I came under another, and I was like, oh shucks. But then as I got to at the four-way, I would see where people were paying attention. They were nodding their heads. It's like there was just humbleness, if that's the right way to describe it. This humbleness, this patience. You could tell that what had already happened in those cities, it humbled the people, right? And so I didn't witness any accidents. And all of the power outages and all of the four-way intersections, people were patient. They were nodding at each other, waving their hands, saying, no, you go ahead. And the people were managing managing those outages, And as I rode through many of the neighborhoods, heavy power lines, all down. Some of them just, down for miles, and trees were in these homes, large trees. Some people just lost everything. You could see some of the dirt on the roads from how the waters had risen so high, right? And so people are leaving who do have vehicles. They're having to leave and come from cities over to go get what they need from some of these stores. So really, a lot of what we're seeing in some of these other cities, they're not really panic buying. These are people who have lost everything, and they're needing to replenish what they have, right? And then I spoke with the young lady, she and her husband, their home, they've been out of power. She said now, ever since the storm, they still have not had power. So they're bouncing back and forth from her in-laws and his in-laws, staying with, their father-in-law and her and his mother-in-law, back and forth. So their families are helping them through their hard time, and then they commute. They're still able to commute for work, but they don't have any power, and whatever they were able to save from their meats and stuff, they were saving it. But pretty much a lot of people have lost the food and stuff that they had as well. And so you had some of these people who were already going through hard financial times, and then they were placed in these situations. And so, they're in need of certain things. And then so when some people have to go and replenish all that they had, you're going to see more scarcity. And with this port these workers still being on strike, fighting for their rights, rightfully so, as the weeks go by, you're going to see more shortages, and there are going to be more negative impacts on our on our communities and many people's jobs, because of how they're going to be affected. It's going to be a trickle down effect, right? If there's not resolutions reached, and even when there are resolutions that are reached, you got to remember, some of these trucks that were in transport, that were already had things to distribute to some of these stores. Some of these trucks had to be rerouted. Some of these trucks, they weren't able to carry on with their normal routes because a lot of the destruction that has taken place, right? So we need to continue to be in prayer for our brothers and sisters, help those that we can help, and try to continue to learn as many skills as we can, because that is what helps us kind of, ride through whatever hard times come and maintain a level of independence, right? So learn as much as you can learn. Have a backup heating supply if you have one, if you're able to. If you have a chimney, hey, you got an axe, you got a strong arm, you got neighbors or friends, like-minded people that you can connect with. that will be a blessing. Because as long as you can go into some woods, and with all the down trees down now, if you got a chainsaw, I don't think anybody will be upset if you start cutting them out. I had a friend, an older guy, business owner. He said that he was blocked all around his house. He couldn't even get his cars out. He's thank God that the trees didn't land on his home, but they kind of blocked him and then a few of his neighbors in. So they had to climb over the trees, and they had to get someone to come and pick them up to and from work. But they were able to manage it. And over time, when they got some free time, they were able to get out there and start slicing those trees up. So there's a lot of free firewood now. Don't just throw that stuff to the side. Keep it. It can be used. Everything can be reused in this cycle of life. That's just how I see it. Everything can be reused. Even when you having these animals, like when my chickens died back there in the backyard, I just buried them in the area where I have used to garden that back there. I haven't gardened in that area for a while, but when my chickens died, I just buried them back in that area. So that area is very, fertile. But anyway, that's just my little 2 cents. Keep doing what you can do. Keep learning, keep growing, stay positive, stay in prayer. There's a lot of sad things happening. But we got to do what we can do to keep our spirits lifted, right? Keep our spirits lifted and keep moving. And so anyway, that's all I wanted to share. I pray that you guys have a blessed Friday. If no one has told you that they loved you today, then you already know your little country bumpkin sister loves you. We are the light of the world. Let's don't ever let our lights grow dark. Let's keep shining bright. And we know that the blood of Jesus Yeshua, our friend, our brother, our Savior, that blood is the only blood that has power. Have a blessed day.